Today we're going to be looking at the probability of one of these hitting a block and how to actually calculate it yourself. Many times pools will have calculations on the probability of actually hitting a block, but today we're going to be showing you what is behind those calculations and how to calculate it for not just your machine but multiple BitAxes or solo miners that you have. We also dive into a little bit more of the probability of all the BitAxes on the network right now hitting a block, or all the solo miners that are currently solo mining hitting a block as well. So we're going to be going over calculations for one of them, and then calculations for if you have more than one, and then calculations for solo miners across the whole network, and how some of it works in the background of the pools estimating your probability of hitting a block. So let's get into the video now. So if you can see here on the pool dashboard that we're currently mining to, we have the block probability. So the main aim of the video today is going to be showing you how this is calculated and kind of how to calculate your own one based off the network hash rate currently. The main reason for this obviously is that you can see it here, but to get a better understanding of how the probability works on the network. So difficulty and hash rate are two very different things. Difficulty pertains to the calculation that you're doing. Hash rate just pertains to the amount of work that's going on the network at current time. So very big distinction, and you can derive some of the calculation from difficulty, but I think it's better to do it based off the hash rate of the network. Difficulty comes into play with luck. So personal luck on mining is very different to the probability. Luck should be 100%. So if you're mining for quite a while, let's say on a smaller coin, your luck should even out to 100%, as you can see kind of in this graphic here. Over the past 64 blocks, the luck is very lucky at 88%. So anything above 100% is considered unlucky, and anything under it is considered lucky. But over the course of 1024 blocks, it should even out to 100% in terms of the luck. Luck is very different because that is derived from hitting a block on the network. So let's say you run a miner for 2 months, a BitAxe miner, and it hits a block on the network, you would be considered extremely lucky on the network. And this is why mainly we go to probability instead of luck calculations, because at the end of the day, you can't really predict it. And that's why a lot of people work just based off purely probability. So luck on the network doesn't come into this factorization of the calculation. So for example, we hit a difficulty of 2.04b there, but the current network hash rate, or current network difficulty, is maybe 114t at current time. So nowhere near that. But if we did hit one of those blocks, then we would be considered very, very lucky because we didn't put in the amount of effort or work required on a probability scale to actually hit that block. Now, the way that I explain this is you would have to be mining for, let's say we're at 3 terahash here, you'd have to be mining for 5,793 years to get a 100% luck on the network. Any mining past that would be considered unlucky, and if you hit a block before that, that would be considered lucky. So that's kind of how solo mining works, and with smaller coins, you can kind of see that, but with Bitcoin, it's not really as obvious because obviously not many people hit Bitcoin blocks solo. So luck doesn't really come into play in terms of why you'd need to know about it. So today the calculation is going to go based off the Bitcoin hash rate chart. So the way that we're going to do it is we're going to take the hash rate, and then we're going to find out how much of the hash rate you personally own of the network, and then how many blocks are on the network produced per day, per week, per month, per year. And then that's going to give you the figure of how many years, or your probability of hitting a block within a day, a year, or even a month. So current hash rate is 884.71. So the first step that you need to do is convert your own hash rate into exahash. You could also alternatively convert exahash down to terahash, whatever you're working with. But I like to use this hash power calculator converter that we see here. So today we're going to be using the example of, well, we have three here because obviously we have 3 BitAxes. So we have the max, the supra, and the gamma. So these hash rates that you see here are the overall hash rates converted back down into exahash. For example, if we put here, I think the max is 450 gigahash. That gives us this in exahash that you see here, which is this number that you see there. And then for the gamma, you have 1.2, so it gives you 0.000012 exahash. So that's the conversion. So you're trying to get all the measurements in basically the same measurement, because if you tried to do it based off terahash, it would give you a weird number and the probability would be wrong. So current network hash rate, if we actually take that figure there, we're going to go with 884. And the blocks per day is going to be 144. So that's 1 block every 10 minutes. So because we know the exahash on the network and now we know the blocks per day. So as I said, that's 144. So every 10 minutes, Bitcoin network hits a block. And that means that there's going to be 144 within the day. We can then do a calculation which takes the hash rate of your miner and then divides it by how much it's worth in the network, times by the amount of blocks per day. Alternatively, you could just do that first calculation where you figure out the amount of network hash rate that your miner has, and that would give you the chance per block. But here we're looking at chances per day. So we're timesing it by 144. You can kind of see that in this calculation here. So you have our hash rate divided by the network hash rate and then times by the blocks per day. And that gives us our percentage of hitting a block per day. Now, alternatively, that is very different to 1 in however many days. So this percentage doesn't really mean much when you're looking at it in terms of probability. So to actually get the amount of days that it would take, so as in like 1 in 3 million days, that's how long it would take on average. All you have to do is take the number 1 and divide it by the percentage. And it should give you the daily figure that we've calculated out here in this row. So I believe that that's 13 million days, and this is 8.7 million, and this is 5.1 million days. And then to get that into a yearly figure, you would just divide this number that we have here by 365 to give us the 1 in yearly comparison. So 1 every 37,000 years on the max, 1 in 24,000 years on the supra, and 1 in 14,000 years on the gamma. And then you can also do a calculation if you have a bunch of BitAxe miners to figure out the probability of hitting it per day. So you just take all of these percentages that you have here and you add them all together like we see here. Do the same calculation, so 1 divided by this percentage number, and that will give you the days, and then we convert that into years by dividing that by 365. So that's what's happening basically in the background of all of these mining pools that show you your chances. This kind of does align with what we have here, so they might be slightly off because they might be a bit more dialed in terms of the chances of block per day and the network hash rate. This is a very basic calculation. We had ours figured out at 7,157 years at this hash rate. But on the pool side, it says yearly 1 in 6,641. So relatively close. And you can also see what we had for the daily, which is 2.6 million, and on here they have 2.4 million. So right down here. And that is basically all of the calculations behind how you figure out the probability of hitting a block on the Bitcoin network. Now we could also do a very, very rough calculation of how many BitAxes there are on the network, and then convert that number into our probability of hitting a block over the next year. So what I mean by that is, let's say that I'm going to take a rough estimate on this one and say that there's around 45,000 terahash in terms of all the BitAxes out there that are currently running. The way that I get that is maybe there's some smaller ones, but mainly the gammas. are going to be around 1.5 to 1.3 terahash, and then the smaller ones like the Supra are going to be 700. Overall, I think there's around 45,000 of these BitAxes sold, and I'm basically averaging that out to 45,000 terahash across all of them. So we type that in there, and then we take the exahash that we have here. So that's our conversion to exahash. Today, we're just going to actually stick it in here. So let's paste that in there. And because we pasted that in there, we have basically the calculation already set out and figured up. So you can see the same thing. We find out how much of the hash rate we own, and then the blocks per day and chances of blocks. And then we take 1 and divide it by the chance of blocks per day. And that gives us the actual amount of days that it should take on average. Remember, this is probability, not the actual luck on the network. But on average, we should be seeing a block from a BitAxe miner every 136 days, which slightly hasn't lined up as we've seen. We've kind of hit 3, I believe. 2 of them were definitely verified, but there may have been a third. I don't really know what the verdict was on that one, if it was powered by more hash rate or not. But we definitely got 2 verified, and that's within maybe a year and a half of the BitAxe being out there. So in theory, it does matter about the amount of exahash that we're estimating BitAxe holds, but we should be getting at least 2 of these blocks a year for people mining with BitAxe miners. As I said, that is very dependent on the fact that 45,000 terahash is out there on the network on these smaller miners, and that also doesn't include the other very, very low hash rate miners that are out there. For example, the Nano 3S, or even, I don't particularly like lucky miners, but there are lucky miners out there. There's also smaller hash rate versions of S9s, and I think Canon actually have their heater, which is around 30 terahash. So there's a lot of solo lottery miners out there that would add to this amount of hash rate here. So in theory, if all of them were solo mining, we should be seeing maybe 2 to 3 of them a year hitting a block over the next couple of years. The Bitcoin hash rate is also increasing, so that's going to take into effect, and the difficulty is going to increase as well. So it is very dependent on that. There is going to be wild swings in it as we go through kind of the price of Bitcoin going up and down. But overall, that's kind of the mechanics behind probability and finding out your probability of your own miner. And we could also do maybe an explorative video later down the line, if you want to see that, of us kind of collecting all the data for how much solo miners are out there, not just the BitAxe, but other ones as well. And we can compile that and see what the chances are per year of, if all of them solo mined, hitting a block. So let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Make sure you like the video and subscribe for more content like this.